Lamar Jackson just gliding on Monday Night Football. Absolute domination. Everyone else on the field runs. He is gliding. He looks like he's on ice skates, like he's got a hoverboard underneath there. He's the absolute darling of the league right now, and for good reason. Remember during the offseason, a lot of people said that a second-year AFC North quarterback would have a breakout season. Just wasn't this one, was it? And look, I'm in that camp too. I did not think Lamar... If you go back and you look at Lamar Jackson's first game against the Bengals last year, he couldn't throw the football. Maybe, and they kind of talked about that on Monday Night Football on Monday night, which is typically when they play Monday Night Football, by the way. They talked about the fact that Lamar said during the offseason the ball just didn't feel right. He was having some trouble moving up to the next level with that bigger football. People forget that, by the way. The football is a different size in the NFL, and it's much harder, too. That's why Deflategate was such a big deal. But anyways, he has figured it out. If you go back to last year, there were times when you really thought, okay, the people who said they wanted them to play wide receiver, you kind of get it now. But he certainly has figured it out. Isn't that amazing? That guys aren't always what they were in college? Unreal. The Ravens hotter than a sheep in a wool sweater right now, man. Now, here's the question. How long does it last? Does it drop off in December, or can they ride it out through January? That's what we'll have to figure it out. And don't get me wrong, they're very good regardless. But this month, November, they murdered everyone. New England killed them by 17. Houston by 34. And then on Monday night, they beat the Rams by 1.5 million. And you just can't stay that hot forever. The question is, can you ride it out through February? And we will find out. That's why we keep watching, right? Of course, they've got the 49ers up next. That one will be fun to watch, no doubt about it. Potential Super Bowl matchup in the making. However, we'll get there when we get there. Welcome to the Good Old Football Podcast. I am your host, your buddy, your pal, your friend, Matt Edwards. We've got a lot of AFC North talk today, as we typically do. Look, if you aren't happy with the quarterback of your football team right now, I'm going to try to give you some hope here. And I've also got 3 very crucial Thanksgiving tips I'm going to get into. And I also want to talk about, I've been mentioning for a few weeks now, I want to talk about Chase Young. Finally had some time to sit down and do a little research on that, tell you what I think about that, tell you who I think he compares to as far as the NFL goes. No doubt he's the best player in college football right now. No doubt about it. Whether or not he wins Heisman, who knows, because the world is wrong and evil and cruel. But he's the best right now. I'm going to tell you who I think he is comparable to in the NFL. We'll talk about that and so much more. Of course, the big news on early in this week has been that AFC North quarterback, Andy Dalton, back as the Bengals starter. I like to think that Zach Taylor Googled 0-16 on Sunday night, saw that the internet is forever. These things last. He saw that winning some games, even just one, is the difference in being like a laughing stock within your own city because you're a 1-15, or being a national laughingstock if you go 0-16. So Andy Dalton's back in there, and I've said this before, I firmly believe he's one of the 16 best quarterbacks in football. 12 quarterbacks get to the playoffs every year. Andy Dalton did it in his first 5 seasons in the league. If you've got a top 16 guy in the NFL, you put the right team around him, you put him in a position to win, and good things tend to happen. Let's look at Russell Wilson, 8th year in the league. A lot of smart people will tell you that he's just now peaking, and that makes sense, right? His defense has definitely gotten worse over the year. His wide receiver core has gone down. Doug Baldwin's retired. He no longer has Marshawn Lynch, who he had early in his career. You look at Andy Dalton, 9th year in the league. Why can we not believe that Andy Dalton isn't also seeing the game right now better than he ever has before? And I'm not saying they're equal, but there's this idea that guys are what they are at a certain point, and that's just not true. Whatever happened to 10,000 hours to master a craft? I went back and looked at Tom Brady's passer rating. He had a passer rating during the entire season above 500 in 3 of his last 5 seasons. As of right now, in 3 of the last 5, Tom Brady has been over 100 for the season as far as his passer rating goes. Before that, he had done it 3 times in 14 seasons total. What's that tell you? And I know Tom Brady is different. I know Russell Wilson is different. Dalton's not Wilson. He's certainly not Brady. But the idea that he's regressed as like a 32-year-old is absolutely ridiculous. Quarterback is the only position in the NFL where dudes are better in their 30s than they are in their 20s. And if you don't want to agree, that's fine. There's a lot of people who have decided they're done with Andy Dalton. They've been done with Andy Dalton, and they'll always be done with Andy Dalton. But if you look at the evidence, look at the best quarterbacks in the league right now, look at how old they are. Most of them in their 30s, not their 20s. I mean, look, I say Andy Dalton's a top 16 quarterback. Here's my guys. I wrote this down. So tier 1, you've got Brady, you've got Breeze, you've got Rodgers, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Big Ben. There's 6. Top of tier 2, we'll put Lamar Jackson. We can't leave him out right now. Even though I'm still not 1,000,000% sold, you can't leave him out right now. He's great right now. Let's live in the moment, as my buddy Ken Harris said last night. Live in the moment. You got Lamar Jackson, tier 2, Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, James Garoppolo, Dak Prescott, and Matt Stafford. There's 12 guys. Tier 3, I say Derek Carr, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, and you can throw Andy Dalton right in there, right? Maybe you can flip a few guys, call it a top 18 if you want. I can already hear Browns fans saying Baker Mayfield should be in there. Maybe he should, but that's another thing I looked at today. Same rating and completion percentage as Dalton this year, and no arguing about it. Baker has a much, 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 much better cast around him. Is Baker a better prospect? Absolutely. Like I said, put them right there beside each other. It really doesn't matter. I think they're playing about the same right now. The argument I would make is Andy Dalton has a trash team when Baker has probably the best receiving duo in the league. And even if you do want to put Baker ahead, I don't care. That's fine. Okay, make him a top 17, 18 quarterback. Quarterbacks do not grow on trees. Ask Tampa Bay. Ask the Browns. The other guy who comes to mind who I would want to sneak in there would be Cam Newton, by the way. Full disclosure. Dalton, better career completion percentage and passer rating than Cam Newton. Look it up if you want. I already did it. This idea, and look, he's had his struggles in the playoffs, sure, but if you go back and look, so have a lot of other guys on that team. Marvin Lewis had not won one before Andy got there either. Again, I'm not saying he's Brady. I'm not saying he's Russell Wilson. But this idea that people seem to have that he is trash, I mean, get out of town with that. Look at the numbers. Go back and watch what he's done when he doesn't have garbage around him. Which right now, that offensive line, as bad as I can ever remember any unit the Bengals have had, and I have been watching them my whole life, and I am 64 years old. And the other thing that really, so there was, people today with Andy Dalton being put back in, said, oh, they're going to blow their draft pick. Who cares about the first pick? Think about how stupid you sound if you think that Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa is going to get drafted and then, everything's suddenly fixed. That's the dumbest argument. There's no shallower take than that. There's no shallower take than assuming drafting a quarterback number 1 suddenly fixes everything. Just because it's been working in the NBA when there is an elite player, people think that translates to the NFL. Drew Brees went 7-9 3 consecutive seasons. With the Saints, he was established. He had won a Super Bowl. An elite quarterback is the main ingredient in the NFL, far from the only one, though. Ask Tampa Bay. They took Jameis Winston number 1 in 2015. How's that going? And by the way, number 2 that year, you probably know, Marcus Mariota got replaced by Ryan Tannehill, who looks pretty good. That could be Andy Dalton next year if he doesn't stay in Cincinnati, going somewhere else, fitting in well, get the right guys around him. Titans were a playoff team last year. Don't forget that. Oh, by the way, first quarterback off the board the year before Jameis and Mariota, Blake Bortles. So you keep telling yourself that having a top 3 pick and taking the quarterback of your choice is just going to fix everything right up. You sound like a goofball. If you're one of these knuckleheads who says the Bengals could ruin their draft pick by putting Andy Dalton back in, read a book, have a thought for yourself, come up with something that you've actually thought of rather than just the first thing that comes to your mind that you think will make you sound smart and get some retweets. The quarterbacks who do win: Brady, 199 overall. Rodgers slipped in the draft. Garoppolo and Carr both look good this year. Second rounders. Breeze, second rounder. Needed the right system, by the way, to become a Hall of Famer. They let him go in San Diego. Amazing what happens when you're in the right situation. Russell Wilson, third rounder. Get your facts straight. Do some research. Pay attention. Maybe that's just directed at a few people. Maybe I take the people who really irritate me and overthink it. Ryan Finley, who replaced him, was a 4th-round pick. That dude's got to hit the weight room. I started to notice, they never let him throw the ball more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. And you got to have velocity on it in the NFL. And he does not have that. He did some okay things. He avoided disaster for the most part, which is important as a backup, especially a rookie backup. And that's what he is. That's what he's going to be. He's a backup quarterback who, again, if you throw him in there and the team's not a disaster around him, maybe in a few years he can manage to not completely ruin the season. But right now, you don't draft guys in the 4th round to put them in. Russell Wilson, 3rd rounder, came in as a rookie. There's an exception to every rule. But it's difficult to judge a guy off 3 games when the team around him might be a 500 team in the CFL, but it could have been worse for Ryan Finley. You hope it doesn't spoil the relationship because he was a 4th round pick. That's not a low pick. The Bengals have got guys like Geno Atkins in the 4th round. You hope to see him develop into a good backup, but he took over a plane that was missing a wing and was on fire. It's not an easy thing to do if you're Ryan Finley. Andy Dalton back in the saddle. We will see how it goes. I think it'll go fine. They got the Jets this week. Just win a game. The internet is forever, and you don't want to be 0-16. Do you know Hugh Jackson's reputation now? Hugh Jackson did some okay things. People forget Hugh Jackson went 8-8 as the Raiders head coach with Jason Campbell as his quarterback. That's not terrible. Anyways, the secondary story in the AFC North this week, Steelers-Browns round 2. Look, it's pretty simple. Browns win, and they're back in the thick of the playoffs race. It's December. Cleveland should have it together by now. Cleveland undoubtedly has a better roster. It's either Mason Rudolph or Devlin Duck Hodges. You don't have James Conner for Pittsburgh. We'll see about Juju Smith-Schuster. Cleveland, you win this one. You've got Cincinnati twice, Arizona, the Baltimore World Beaters. So let's say you go 3-1 there. You're 9-7. That probably gets you in the playoffs, especially if you beat Pittsburgh, who's in front of you. By the way, I mentioned Tannehill. Tennessee right in the mix of that as well. You know how brutal it will be if the Browns get left out of the playoffs? And I've not looked into all the scenarios, but if the Browns were to get left out of the playoffs because of a Week 1 embarrassment against the Titans. I said last night, too, with Baltimore, for those who aren't maybe as connected in Ohio, Cleveland hates the Ravens. They are the old Browns. They took the team and moved to Baltimore. There are people, one guy urinated on Art Modell's grave. That's hatred. And for a year that was supposed to be so amazing for the Browns, the Ravens looking like world beaters out there is just, it's brutal. Latest chapter in the book that is the unfair life of a Cleveland sports fan. But this Sunday in Pittsburgh, it's going to be as close to a playoff game as the Browns have had maybe since 2007. I think that was the year they went 10-6. They, of course, missed the postseason. Was that 2007? Yes, that would have been 2007. If not, it was right in that general vicinity. But they went 10-6, missed the postseason. This is as close to a playoff game as they've had in, 12 years then. Eastern Ohio going to see some uncomfortable Thanksgiving meal conversations this week, too. You got a lot of crossover between Steelers and Browns fans. Just, be nice to each other, I guess. If you want to, I don't care what you do. Just don't hurt anyone. Like, was that Alabama, LSU? Every year, Alabama plays a rivalry game that results in someone getting shot. I got to look this up now so I can make sure I'm not wrong and I'm not slandering the fine people of Alabama. Was it Alabama, LSU? Oh, yeah, here we go. College football talk. Alabama fan charged with murder of LSU fan. Did he actually kill him? Shouldn't be joking about this. Alabama fan charged with murder of LSU fan after shooting during LSU-Alabama game. Wow, yeah. Last year, an Alabama fan was fatally injured. And this year, Mikey Merritt, allegedly, according to this, shot his one-time friend, David Fulkerson, an Alabama fan. Wow, that's sad. You guys, be nicer to each other. None of this nonsense over Brown Steelers, all right? You want to get a little feisty, have a little conversation out in the living room away from the women and children, that's one thing, but we're not as crazy up here as they are in the South, I don't think. Well, some of us are. Who knows? Speaking of Thanksgiving, 3 things this week. It's the Thanksgiving Tips edition.
We've got to be the dumbest team in America in terms of playing the game.
All right, tip number 1 on Thanksgiving. You got to compliment everyone you see. Don't make it obvious. You don't want to look like a suck-up. If you're unsure how to do this, go look at some of Bill Belichick's press conferences, all right? He is a master at saying things that he does not mean. He plays the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins twice a year. Always comes up with something nice to say about those teams, despite the fact, for the most part, they're horrendous. Bills having a great year. They play on Thanksgiving, by the way. That's the best game of the day, Bills, Cowboys. But Bill Belichick's great at this. This makes your family and friends feel good. Whatever bad things your family has been saying about you behind maybe like your back, they suddenly don't seem true to them. Little by little, with each compliment, you're less and less the loser of the family. You don't want to be a loser. You don't want to go through what Ryan Finley just went through. You want to be a winner. You want to be Andy Dalton, be a champion at Thanksgiving. Tip number 1, compliment everyone you see. Tip number 2 at Thanksgiving, bring something. This seems simple, but I've realized a lot of people my age were kind of like coddled to the point that even though they're 30, they still treat Thanksgiving as a chance to go home, get wasted on Wednesday night, stumble into Thanksgiving dinner without anything. You know, you look like you've been locked in a shed for a week, and then you just feast away on all this food you didn't buy, didn't help cook, and really didn't deserve. All right, this was a cute move when you were 24, but now you're in your late 20s, maybe early 30s. You're starting to make people wonder if they should seek treatment for you. Thanksgiving is for 3 things: food, football, and making it seem like everything is fine with everyone. The first 2 are pretty easy, but that third one can be tough for some of you. Ease everyone's mind. Show up, just a bottle of wine, maybe a dessert. Someone says, you didn't have to bring anything. You'd be like, I just whipped it up this morning. You don't need, it can clearly be a store-bought pie. You can still claim it. No one will say anything. Set it on the table. Go talk to Uncle Travis. People think you're doing all right in life. Bring something to Thanksgiving. Number 3, this is an important one. Do not talk to your relatives about football unless you know them very, very well. If this isn't someone you talk to, I don't know, maybe like 10 times a year, avoid it. Because otherwise, what happens is they'll bring up the only thing they've paid attention to regarding the NFL the last 3 years, and that has to do with this situation regarding standing versus kneeling when a particular song gets played before football games, and you don't want to get into that. If they bring up football, you go the other way with the conversation. That's how you avoid this. You stay short in your response. You don't say much because football might be on the TV, right? I don't know what channel the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is on. I think it's probably on NBC. Fox probably has the 12:30 game. Either way, it's going to end up on TV. You just go the other way. You talk about school. You talk about work. Jeffrey Epstein is fine in this situation. Whatever it takes. Just don't let your holiday get uncomfortable by talking about the NFL, unless it's someone you know very well. And then just keep it one-on-one. Tell them to listen to this podcast, all right? The listens last week weren't great. Some of the older ones randomly get a bunch of plays. I don't know if it's the host site. I don't know what it is, but I cannot get a grip on when people are listening and why they're doing it. So if I get a spike after Thanksgiving, I'll know you guys are helping me out. I would appreciate that. So those are your 3 things, all right? So let's recap. Compliment everyone you see. Say something nice, but don't make it too obvious. Bring something. Anything. Can be a 6-pack of Busch Light. That's fine. And 3, don't talk to your relatives about football, in particular the NFL, unless you know them very, very well. All right. Hope we all learned something there. I was looking back at my preseason predictions. I have the Saints over the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's still viable. Saints I feel very good about, but the Chiefs defense, not that good. Teams are starting to figure out how to slow down the Chiefs offense, and that's why I don't flip out about the Ravens this year. I mean, last year the Chiefs looked unstoppable. This year, they're still very good, but Patrick Mahomes clearly has been brought back down to earth a little bit. Now, did he miss some time? Yes, Tyreek Hill missed some time. It's hard to stay in a rhythm. It's hard to sustain, greatness. And that's what the Chiefs were last year. They were great. And same with the Rams. The Rams got absolutely destroyed. They're on the outside looking in right now. They're 6-5. And, I hate to admit it, but this is why you can really only trust Tom Brady in the NFL. Love him or hate him, nonstop consistency. Other teams cannot figure it out. As I try to pull up the NFL standings right now to make sure I have those records right. And you look at the Chiefs right now, they're still in the division lead, but it's 7-4. Raiders hot on their heels, which is something none of us thought we would be saying. I mean, we were laughing at the Raiders, thinking they might be lucky to win a handful of games this year, and they are firmly in that playoff hunt. So we'll see. I mean, it's just a hard lead to figure out. Simple as that. By the way, speaking of the Saints, who I have as my Super Bowl pick, because I do believe in karma to an extent. However, Sean Payton should get to punch a referee in the face. They still won on Sunday, but after the idiocy that has been the pass interference replay this year, for him to get a challenge overturned against him on that, plus that kept him out of the Super Bowl last year, he should get to punch an official just once, one and done. Don't make a big deal out of it, but he definitely has earned the right to make that happen. So this weekend, we'll talk about Chase Young here. This weekend, I'm watching Ohio State, Penn State. I'm on Blondie's Upper West Side bar, one of the few sports bars you can go to and actually watch a game. I'm very anti-watch games I care about at a bar, but in this instance, it was okay because when you go there, football is the focus on Saturdays, and that was nice. I don't typically like being at bars during games. There's too many people trying to talk to you, and, sometimes they'll turn off the volume, and it just irritates me. If you're someone who regularly goes out to the bar to watch games, you probably, one of two things. A, you like drinking more than you like football, and that's fine, more power to you. Or B, your team is out of it, and you are looking to forget every weekend ever until football season is over. What I'm saying is Blondie's is a fine bar to watch a game at. Chase Young is about as close as we've come that I can remember to a consensus on the best player in college football. Last defensive player I can remember getting this much respect and admiration, probably Jadeveon Clowney. And I'm going over it in my mind right now to make sure I'm not missing anyone, but Jadeveon Clowney, remember he had that massive hit against Michigan in the Outback Bowl, this, that, and the other. And this got me thinking about NFL comparisons to Chase Young. Now, Clowney's probably the first guy that comes to mind. He's a force when he's out there. That's been his issue, is staying out there, staying healthy. But he's only played 16 games once in his NFL career. Clowney had 9.5 sacks that year, a force for the Texans. But again, I'm not sure we've ever really seen him at 100%. Now, the guy, as I went through, who Chase Young really reminds me of, is Michael Strahan. If you go back, look at Michael Strahan's highlights on YouTube, which you can do. He's a Hall of Famer, and if you watch him, he was just a bully, and you were always amazed at how quick he moved for his size. And he had this ability to kind of leap at the quarterback. He'd stretch out there. He looked like a jaguar going after his prey. And Strahan holds the NFL all-time single sack record, 22.5. Chase Young, 16.5 this year. That's an Ohio State single season record. If you watch Michael Strahan, and that's kind of what I did, I got a few guys in mind and then went and looked at highlights because, Strahan's been out of the game for a while now. But you see so many similarities there. And remember, Chase Young missed those 2 games after a suspension that we all know is ridiculous. But, of course, we've come to expect nothing less from the NCAA. And, oh, yeah, he's got those dirtbags from Ann Arbor this Saturday. He's got 20 on his mind. We all love nice, psychologically satisfying round numbers, and 20 just sounds so much better than, let's say you only get 2, then you're at 18.5. No one wants that. You want 20. So he's going for 3.5 minimum this weekend. And then the other guy that came to mind when it comes to Chase Young would be DeMarcus Ware. Played for, of course, the Cowboys and the Broncos. And the way Strahan finishes reminds me more of Chase Young, but the way DeMarcus Ware comes off the ball reminds me more of Chase Young. Kind of a hybrid of the two. DeMarcus Ware would just push his way past the offensive line, and he had this ability, which you always see with Chase Young, so I guess maybe DeMarcus Ware is a better comparison. He had this ability to swallow quarterbacks with his arms, and Chase does the same thing. If he is within arm's reach of it, it's over. Say your prayers, tell your mother you love her, lights out. And that's what Chase Young does. That's what DeMarcus Ware did. I do think the DeMarcus Ware comparison probably a little bit more accurate. But either way, if you take whoever takes Chase Young, you're going to be happy with getting one of those guys. Way to finish strong on that topic, Matt. So Clowney, Strahan, DeMarcus Ware, all 3 just like Chase Young. It's what it would be like if a grizzly bear were allowed to play football. Just towering guys. Of course, the Bengals look like they'll have the overall pick, number 1. They're going to get some offers. And look, if someone wants to move up and Chase Young, I'm not against that. If I'm the Bengals, I load up on picks. I stick with Andy Dalton if he wants to stay because that team is not close. But also, if they take Chase Young, that's fine too. I'm kind of shying away from them taking a quarterback. You're just going to put someone back there who gets mauled because that offensive line is garbage. You're not close in that regard. So if someone offers Cincinnati a nice package this year to move up, especially if they can do it and stay in the top 10, make it happen. If you can get, another first this year, maybe next year, and load up on some 2s or a 3, make it happen. You need a lot of pieces down there in the Queen City. By the way, that garbage reference, I don't even know what that's from. I hope it's not a Ben Stiller movie. And just a heads up, by the way, Sam Darnold and the Jets have won 3 straight. Look, I've got to toot my own horn sometime because I got it so wrong on Lamar Jackson. I'll take a W where I can get it. Sam Darnold and the Jets, 3 straight. This is a team I thought would go 10-6 and steal a wild card spot. They look really good all of a sudden. Fortunately, when the Bengals are coming up for them, isn't that great? Isn't that just wonderful? Just what we were looking for. As the Bengals sit at 0-11. I almost said 11-0. Can you imagine that? All right, guys, look, I've really tailed off here on the end of this podcast. It's not my best finishing effort. Much like the Bengals on Sunday. Couldn't finish off old Duck Hodges. A lot going on this weekend. We'll see what happens. Of course, the Bengals take on the Jets. A lot of good. This is probably the best slate. And so many of us are going to be traveling and whatnot. But, of course, you've got Browns Steelers, which is of a lot of interest for some folks. And then, obviously, man, you look at that San Francisco-Baltimore game, and that's an absolute, I don't know, I almost called it a banger. Am I too old to use the word banger? I don't know. I'm going to use it anyways. That's an absolute banger. And then you've got Oakland, Kansas City, which suddenly looks like, should Oakland pull off that upset, I think that puts them in the old driver's seat in the AFC West, which is unreal to think about. Oakland winning that division. I'd like to know, let me see if I can look it up real quick. The Raiders were 80-1 for the Super Bowl and 40-1 in the AFC West. So, if you add those 40-1 odds, not bad. New England, Houston on Sunday night, and then another good one on Monday night. Joe and Booger getting some action once again with the Vikings and Seahawks. Fun slate coming up. It'll be a good time. If you want to follow along with me outside of the podcast, I am on Twitter at Matt Edwards. If you want to see me do goofy stuff in New York City, I am at Good Old Matthew on Instagram. I'm kind of getting away from Instagram. I've seen it all. What else am I going to see on Instagram? I don't know the last time I saw something on Instagram that surprised me. Getting away from it. Need something new. All right, it's the Good Old Football Podcast. Please, if you like the show, rate, subscribe. Even if you subscribe for a week and unsubscribe, just keep it going. Would love to pick up some more people, see what you guys think. If you want to let me know what you think about the podcast, my DMs are open. Tell your friends and family if you like it. And if you don't, that's okay too. We're still friends here. I appreciate you tuning in. It's been the Good Old Football Podcast.